Hello again, everyone. This is Greg again with MVC Tutorial. I believe this is 6. Last you heard from me, we did a whole bunch of entity stuff. I went over DTOs and how to convert your entity objects to DTOs, and repositories to make those calls to entity, and the servicer that's in between the controller and the repositories to make those calls, convert things into DTOs for the entity, and convert them back to the view models for the controller to consume. So today we're going to kind of just go over some different pieces of MVC with relation to views, models, and controllers. And then next time we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the code. But I didn't want to overwhelm people by just coding and not give an overview. So for those of you that have been following, or haven't been following, I'm sorry, would probably benefit from going back and doing the other tutorials. Otherwise, build up your own little library here with some repositories and DTOs, so at least you can follow along when we get there. But for this tutorial, you probably don't need it because, like I said, I'm going to kind of just be going over routing and various aspects of views and models, or view models. So first thing, if we open up the global ASX CS file, which this is the file that gets run, and this is an MVC or web forms that gets run first before anything else. You'll notice that there's a protected routine here called application start. So this runs before any actual stuff is pushed back to the browser or any actual not compilation, running of the code actually happens. You'll notice that it registers all areas. We haven't gone over really areas yet, but we will in the future. You'll notice that this is just the default SQL connection. That's fine. You don't have to worry about that. And then what's interesting here is you'll see that there's global filters, which we'll go over much further down the line, but filters are similar to HTTP modules and handlers if anybody's used to dealing with that or knows at least what they are. And then you'll see this register routes. Now what this does is it takes all these routes, anything that's in this routes object, and has a map route property. It'll look for the route name, and then it's going to look for how it's going to do its routing. So what this says is that in your URL, when I say URL, I mean, actually, so I don't get IntelliSense here, let's do that. Localhost 8080 / okay, so that's your URL. And then what you're going to notice here is there's controller. So in our case, we have this awesomeness controller. Now what you're going to do here, now it's not awesomeness controller, it's awesomeness. And the reason being is because what the routing does is it basically uses the controller as the controller word as a filter, so that it can do a split between controller and awesomeness. I'm sure it's doing some fancier footwork, but that's basically what it's doing. And it will take awesomeness and know that that's your controller, and it will strip this so that the URL becomes more of a friendly name. They are trying very hard with MVC to make it more user-friendly as far as the URLs come out. And then you'll notice that here now you have action. So we've got action is, if we go back to the awesomeness controller, the action we have here is index. Oops, index. Like that. And then that will actually take us to the main page. Okay, so just so you have an idea of where this is all coming from, you'll also notice this right here. This allows you to create new parameters in here if need be. So you can add parameters to your URL, sort of like this, if anybody's used to gets. Some value equals Greg. Okay, you can use that. Actually, since, just so it actually stays all blue. Okay. So what this would do is it would go to awesomeness, it would go to the action of index, and it would pass in the property some value. And what you could do here is in your index here, so you would have string some value, and some value would end up in here, or Greg would end up in here. So just so everybody understands that, we're going to definitely be using that. A lot of where you use that piece of what I was just showing you is more for searching. Like if you're going to search database, if you want to pass it parameters, again, is a good way to do that. You can also do post, which hides things much easier. But as time passes, you'll notice that depending on the situation, it may be difficult to do that. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Now, as far as the controller is concerned, when you create your action here, you can do add view, and that'll be nice because Visual Studio makes a nice little hook into the view name. You can choose whether ASPX or Razor. I don't know if I mentioned it in other tutorials, but definitely stick with Razor if you can, because people have been saying that that the ASPX engine is going to go away in one of the next MVC versions, either 5 or 6. There's this nice little checkbox here for create a strongly typed view. We will definitely be using this in the future. Sometimes you want dynamic, but the majority of the times I find myself using strongly typed. What this allows you to do is choose, like, if you remember, we have this person object. So you could hook that up, and then any of the properties within person will end up being accessible via the view. And we'll go over that more in detail, but just the basics of it. The scaffolding template allows you to do create, delete, edit, list. And what that does is it starts trying to compile the HTML for you so that it's easier based on the model, the model class or the dynamic. If it's dynamic, it'll leave everything open, empty, but it'll start making your div and table tags for you so that you don't have to do it. I don't find scaffolding save that much time, but some people love it, so we may or may not go over it, but feel free to look it up. It definitely doesn't hurt anything. I just find that they still are not always where I need it to be. There's this create a partial view. If you don't want this to be a full view, you can make a partial. What a partial is, you can kind of attribute that to, if anybody's old school, iframes. What iframes were, well, I'm sure they still exist, but very few people use them, is it would allow you to make this box, right? And it was the tag, the HTML tag was iframe. What it would allow you to do is inside of a web page, you could put another web page inside this iframe or another website or whatever, and you could interact with it without harming the parent site. So that's kind of what this does. Is it'll only much cleaner and W3C compliant. Where I don't think iframe even is. If it is, it's very shunned and not used very often. Excuse me. What you'll use partials for a lot is like if you're going to make a table, a data table of some sort that's generic, or any generic pieces would be a great piece for that, like a file upload tool that you're going to use in multiple different applications, because then once this is created, you can make a model bound to it, and then do HTML.render partial, give it the partial name and the object that you wanted to shove into it, and boom, you've got a partial in the middle of your page with everything possible that you needed. The last piece here, and then we're almost done here, is your layout page. I strongly suggest always using a layout page. You'll also want to use an error page, but the error page, that's for stuff we're going to go over down the line, but basically to be able to consume an exception or an error, shove it into a log somewhere, and then show this nice little error page so you don't get the yellow screen or the blue screen of death for Windows. I call it the yellow screen of death for for .NET. Now, layout pages are based kind of like if you're used to the word templates, or in web forms, SiteMaster. SiteMaster, this is the same thing, only in the MVC version. And basically it allows you to put things like a menu or a banner on this SiteMaster or layout page, and then with that you can reference it to the other pages, and those will populate on all the pages. This way, if you have to add a new menu or you change the banner out, you're not changing this on 10 different pages, you just change it on one. Okay, so that's, I'm not going to create this now, but I just want to kind of guide everybody through this. You'll notice I have an action result here, and for test action I have view result. What we found that's nice to make it more reader, the code more reader friendly, is if you're going to send back a view, to use view result. If you're going to send back some code, or you're doing a whole bunch of processing in between, use action result. View result makes it much more specific. You can use these interchangeably. It makes no difference, because if you look at view result here, you hit F12, you'll see view result inherits view result base, but if we go in there, view result base inherits from action result. So action result, action result is the abstract version. In fact, if I hit F12 here, it's going to be abstract. Okay, and that abstract object is obviously inherited, as I showed you, to view result. So this is much more of a aesthetics thing, or keeping the code clean thing. There are other types. There's JSON result, which you'll use with jQuery. What is it called? With jQuery AJAX calls, or JavaScript AJAX calls. So that kind of gives you an overview of that. The only other thing I wanted to kind of just gloss over real quick is you'll notice these person models. If you haven't followed along before, these are the models we'll start binding to the views. So these are what we're calling the view models, and what the view models allow you to do is bind to the view itself in such a way that the controller can pass data to the view, and the view is going to be able to render it and know what to do with it without significant amount of code. So that's about it. We're about 12 minutes and 45 seconds, so I'm going to stop here, and next time we'll start coding. Alright, thank you very much. Happy coding, and if you'd like to, visit my blog at http://objectreferencehell.com. Thank you, and have a great day.